The Daily Derech. We are walking the path of holiness.
Hello, everybody. This is Rabbi Marcus Rubenstein. Welcome to the Daily Derech, a special project of exploring Judaism, the United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism, and the Rabbinical Assembly. Today is the 5th day after Shabbat Kodesh, the 5th of Sivan, 5786, corresponding in the secular calendar to Thursday, May 21st, 2026. We'll read special Torah readings for the holiday of Shavuot this coming Shabbat, and it is the 49th day of the Omer. Me'am Loez. We're going to continue studying the Parashah to prepare for Shavuot, the Parashah that we will read from Exodus chapter 19 on the first day of Shavuot, as the Jewish people prepare to receive the Torah on Mount Sinai. So we're going to talk about this verse 3 here. Chapter 19, verse 3. Moshe Allah el Elohim vayikra alav Hashem min hara le'emor ko tomar levet Yaakov v'taged libnei bnei Israel. And Moses went up to the mountain, and the Lord called him out of the mountain, saying, thus shalt thou say to the house of Yaakov, and tell the children of Israel. Now, this is an interesting line. Obviously, we could talk about Moses rising to God and what that means. We're not going to talk about that today, although very, very interesting. But rather, what actually gets said from the mountaintop itself. And that's this peculiar line, Ko tomar levet Yaakov v'taged libnei bnei Israel. Thusly say to the house of Jacob and to the children of Israel, and tell the children of Israel. This line is famously usually understood in a rabbinic in rabbinic midrashim to really show how the Torah should be presented differently to different groups of people, and it usually talks about it in the sense of gender. So if you actually look at the sentence, there seems to be a repetition: say to the house of Jacob, tell to the children of Israel. And so usually the way this is referred to is Lebeit Yaakov, usually refers to women, and Bnei Yisrael, which means technically sons of Israel, would be the men. And Tomar usually means say, is one form to say, and it's usually a lighter, more sort of sensitive version of say than Taged, which means usually much more strict and much more harsh. It's like to say to someone versus to tell to someone, right? Very, very similar difference in English. And often it's told that women should receive Torah this way and men should need to receive Torah this way. And I don't want to get into that today, although very traditional. Obviously, that idea has always troubled me because there's obviously women who behave very, very differently from each other. There's men who behave very, very differently each other. And I don't think this is necessarily based on gender of how someone needs to receive Torah. So this has been difficult for me. Now, I have understood this teaching importantly to say that different kinds of people need to hear Torah in different ways, and that's perfectly okay, and it's all Torah. But I was really surprised with the interpretation that I saw in Me'am Loez, and seeing that it's in Me'am Loez, Me'am Loez actually gets it from the Maharal of Prague. He wrote a sefer on Torah called Tiferet Yisrael, and he gets this from the 28th chapter of that sefer from the Maharal of Prague. And I was really wowed by this particular teaching. So the Maharal of Prague notes actually, and actually he's really getting this out from the Gemara itself, from the Talmud, that women are mentioned before men here. And first it's Tomar lebeit Yaakov v'tagid lebnei Yisrael. Right, it's the women first. And so the Gemara actually notes, and which the Maharal, of course, expands on, multiple reasons why Moses spoke first to the women before the men. And yes, some of them in here, again, anytime we try to say women are like this, men are like this, there's going to be sexism there, right? We understand that. And this is the way many people in the past thought, and we don't think this way. We try not to at least think this way anymore. And we know there's many different kinds of women and many different kinds of men. But I think it's beautiful, at least here, the things that the Me'am Loez here says about women. And of course, it's not only just about women, it's about all of us, something that we should all strive for. And there's not enough times in our tradition for women to be role models for men. So I usually like to keep the ones that when they appear in the tradition. So here it is. So according to Me'am Loez, God had 4 reasons for telling Moses to speak to the woman before men. Number one, women are careful to keep the commandments. Yeah, I don't know where he's getting this from, but that in general, just women are more careful, and so they're going to be spoken to first. I think that this is, of course, important for all of us, right? God speaks to us first about the Torah when we actually show that we can be careful about it, when we actually diligent about it, when we actually serious about it. Torah is not something that it's much harder for God to speak to us when we're not willing to be fully serious and diligent and get into the details about a particular thing. And usually, what I think also here is the skill to not just have an idea, but to unpack it and do it, and to be able to utilize and think about all the details and when actually fulfilling a project in the real world. And this is essential for Torah. Torah can't just be a bunch of ideas. It has to be actions, detailed actions that are applied in our lives, and that requires a lot of diligence and a lot of detailed work. The second reason is because the women supposedly have the responsibility of raising the children. Of course, this probably was the way it was back then. Now both men and women share children, but what's beautiful about this is that actually our ability and our need to raise children actually makes us more receptive to the Torah. And especially what the Me'am Loez here says, it's because the women are constantly around the children when they're raising them and teaching them all the things, like to wash one's hands before eating bread and to say blessings and all the different values that they teach them in the home. We know education begins so early in the home. And so those are the people who need the Torah the most, because they're the ones who are really teaching the most sensitive place, our smallest of children. And actually, by being around children and being committed to teaching them and educating them and helping them to become better and to become the people we need them to be and God needs them to be, actually that makes us more able to receive Torah. And obviously, oftentimes you think it's the opposite. If you're spending too much time raising children and not at work, you're sort of not doing the real thing. But actually, it seems the tradition actually flips it on our head. If we're spending more time raising children, we actually deserve special attention from God and for the Torah to come to us first. Number three, this is an interesting argument about a real estate purchase. Supposedly in the laws of real estate purchases, basically, even in the time when men really made business decisions for the household, there's a rule in Judaism that you can't buy someone's house or make these big financial decisions without first talking to the person's wife. So if I'm buying somebody's house, I can't just make a deal with the husband. I have to first ask the wife and say, do you also want to sell this house? And only afterwards that she says it's okay to sell her house, then you can buy the house from the husband, but she has to agree to it first. And so here we see that both parties need to be addressed. And I think that this is a beautiful analogy, even though times have changed and I don't think there's one party who's more in charge of the house than the other anymore. But I think this teaches us a lot about in Torah and in Judaism, everybody has to have a role. Everybody has to take responsibility. We have to, as rabbis and as teachers, and Torah needs to communicate in the language of all different peoples. It can't just be like, oh, it works for one group of people, so everybody will sort of come along with them whether they understand it or not. That's not the case, actually. We have to bring Torah and make it in the language that people can understand. There's one other teaching, basically, that women are extra righteous, and this comes out from, and that it was because of them that the Jewish people were redeemed from Egypt. This comes out of a special midrash that we actually talked about in the Daily Derech in the past about the women having children in the desert while the men were working, and their miraculous commitment to continuing to have children and continuing life under very harsh circumstances. And because they were responsible for the redemption, therefore they will be the first ones addressed when the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. But in the end, beautiful that the Torah was first really told to the women, and then, only then, the men. But more importantly, there's so much here that we can take home in order to improve our lives and actually receive Torah this Shavuot. Mishnah Torah. We're going to continue learning the laws of lashon hara, or bad speech, from Hilchot De'ot, chapter 7 in the Mishnah Torah. We're going to learn the fifth halacha today and talk about another condition of lashon hara. And this one actually might be surprising. I find this halacha to be actually very helpful because it helps. It's very easy when beginning to talk about lashon hara, to start saying like everything is lashon hara, everything is everything that is possibly negative is going to be lashon hara. And I think this does open up lashon hara a little bit in a helpful way. So he says in Halacha 5, there's no difference whether one speaks lashon hara about a person in his presence or behind his back. The statements of people who relate matters which, when passed from one another to another, will cause harm to a man's person or to his property, or will even merely annoy him or frighten him, are considered as lashon hara, or evil speech. So what he's saying here is, a lot of people say, oh, well, I'm not going to say it to their face. I'll just say it behind their back, and it won't get to them. Don't worry. It's not going to hurt them. This is considered equal lashon hara to saying it directly to one's face. So that claim should immediately be taken away. And I think this is important to repeat to ourselves, because this is something that our mind says to us often, and it rationalizes the transgression. But again, we should understand that it's still just as much of a transgression. Now, this is the part I was talking to you, though, about maybe a little bit of a permission structure that helps us say things that we need to say. So he continues on. He says, if such statements were made in the presence of 3 people, one may assume that the matter has already become public knowledge. Thus, if one of the 3 relates the matter a second time, it is not considered lashon hara, provided his intention was not to spread the matter further and publicize it. So let's play this out here, right? You're hearing a matter in a group of 3 people, right? And you hear this particular detail that is of degrading information about another human being. It would already be true that if you have done this, this may be considered a transgression at this point, just even for listening to lashon hara, because it's important to understand that lashon hara is not just about speaking lashon hara. You also transgress by receiving lashon hara as well, by being a listener. You actually have a responsible say, no, I don't want to hear this. But regardless, once something has been said, whether in a transgressive way or in a permitted way, in front of 3 people, at least those people who are told those things can then repeat, are actually permitted, or at least it's not considered a transgression, to repeat those things to other people. Now, this I think is really important, because it really has to do with public knowledge. The assumption is that once 3 people know about something, they're going to go and tell other people, and the whole world will eventually know it, and it's basically considered public knowledge at this point. Now, this is very different if this person says to those 3 people, don't say anything, keep this a secret. Obviously, you need to keep it a secret then. But if they don't say that necessarily, and they don't care if you spread it wherever you want to, then technically it seems, according to this law itself, just by reading the text itself, it would be considered permitted. Now, obviously, many authorities wanted to make this smaller, because it's obviously an exemption in lashon hara that you could use all the time. But I just want, before we talk about how this is interpreted by the commentators of the Mishnah Torah, I want to just first take this as a general understanding that, look, once something becomes public knowledge and it's sort of in the public realm, we actually are able then to speak about it. And I think this really comes to things that have to do of a political nature, like talking about political leaders or and everything like this, that we are allowed to talk about community events that are of the public knowledge. And just by talking about a community event that sort of everybody already knows about, it's not considered doing lashon hara. So very, very important. This could be a real problem if we take this too seriously, because if you can't actually talk about what's going on in the world around you, and you can, then society will cease to function, right? We need to be able to talk about what's going on in the world, even if it's degrading about somebody else. Now, this, of course, is going to be minimized by halacha. A great example actually is from the Kesef Mishnah, who's eventually his name is Rabbi Yosef Karo. He ends up writing the Shulchan Aruch, but first he writes a commentary on the side of the Mishnah Torah, and he writes, "Kolomar shezehi tarnu hainu she'im yavo b'mikra ledavar be'inyan eino asor la'omro." Right. So this is as to say, this is only specifically in the case is permitted in a case when it happens accidentally, or something comes up in happenstance, a kind of a story to talk about a particular thing. It's not forbidden any longer to say it. But still, one should not intend to reveal something even more. So if the people you're saying it to or don't know about the matter, and you know that, and you're saying it to them, and by doing so, you believe that the matter will be revealed more, then actually, technically, this law does not apply. this law only applies to people who you pretty much assume they already know about it because it's been made public by at least been told by 3 people. And it's not, and there is no intention to reveal it any further, right? If it's to talk about something that everyone already knows about, that wouldn't be considered lashon hara. But to talk about something that the people you're talking to don't know about, but everyone else knows about, that would still be considered lashon hara. That obviously, I think, destroys a lot of the political angle of this, of like being able to talk about issues that are happening in the community and to try to educate people about what's going on in the community. If we go by the Kesef Mishnah's interpretation. But I do think it's the interpretation is important, especially when it comes to interpersonal matters. We should never be intending to expose something further if it's degrading about another human being that another person doesn't know about. Now, this might be different when it comes to politics or business decisions, because this actually affects our monetary life, all the basic necessities of life. These things are really, really important. But if it's not about that, then I believe we should follow the Kesef Mishnah's prescription here of not revealing, not intending to reveal anything more than the people who already know about it, even if it's something that's been said in front of 3 people. Menorat HaMaor. We'll continue learning the section on Shavuot from this wonderful sefer, Menorat HaMaor. And today we're going to learn about that famous phrase, Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do, and then we will understand or hear. This is the phrase in which the Jewish people responded to Moshe about whether they would accept the Torah, whether they would do it. And the Menorat HaMaor chooses to talk about those lines here. The phrase itself has actually become emblematic of our relationship with Torah, our ideal relationship with Torah, and something that's profoundly difficult, I think, for modern spiritual seekers and people in this world to connect to. The idea that first they said, we will do, and then only after we will understand. And oftentimes this drash is used to say, first you do it, then you understand it. And then people say back to you, well, how do I know if I should do it or not, or why to do it, or everything like this? And they said, just do it and you'll find out. And then many people do Judaism, and, well, let's just say they never find out. So I don't know how well it works in this regard. I think there's many people who do Judaism and then just find no meaning in it. And that's, of course, we don't want that. And that can't obviously be what the Torah wants from us either. So what could this possibly mean? And I think the Menorat HaMaor actually gets a lot better at this. So what he basically says is the Na'aseh things are the actions in which we actually take in Judaism, whether they're character actions to become better people, or mitzvah actions, things that we do because they're required by God. That is the first thing that we should be concerned about, is doing the actual good in the world. Only then afterwards we should get to the nishma, which are the intellectual ideas that are behind the tradition, the philosophy, the deeper intellectual ideas behind things. And I think what he's trying to tell us here is that the most important thing in Torah is to do it, is to actually do it, whether that is doing mitzvot or doing good to just doing good deeds or what have you, or working on your personality and trying to become a better person, a more generous person, all the things that actually make a difference in your life and and actually change the world around us and change our lives. Those are the things that are the most important. In the end, we also have a philosophy, we have theology, we have ideas that are also really important and part of the Torah, but they are secondary always to the action, and they should always be linked up to the action itself, so that the philosophy and the theology back up our actions, not that somehow our actions are only done if we have the right theology or the right thinking or philosophy or able to understand some kind of deep idea. Deep ideas are important, but they are always going to be secondary to doing the good in the world. And that, in the end, is what Torah is so much about. That, in my mind, is why the Torah is called Torah in the first place. Torah comes from the word instruction. Instruction is never given out just, is usually not the word used to learn a complex idea or to think something very deeply, or even to communicate an idea. Usually it is instruction to do something practical, to do something pragmatic. And that, in the end, is the most important part of the Torah, is that it tells us actually what to do. And if our Torah is not impacting what we do, it is worthless. It really, truly is worthless to us. Now, I think then to say that there is no nishma and there is no understanding or intellectual part or philosophy would be a horrible thing to say. It's really not true. The intellectual philosophical part of the Torah is super deep and super beautiful. It's one of my favorite parts. But the second that it is not combined or in service of good action is the second it becomes no longer Torah. So really, really important here. And I think this gets us away a little bit from just do the action, you'll understand it later. I kind of don't like that idea. That's a really hard thing to say to someone. But to say to someone, in the end, whatever you understand needs to add into the actions in which you actually do. And in the end, the actions that you actually do in your life are the most important not thinking the correct way. Very important for understanding what Torah truly is. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful Shavuot. I won't speak to you until, we receive the Torah on Mount Sinai. Chag Sameach, everybody. Well, that's it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Daily Derech. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to email me anytime at rmr@templeofaaron.org. Thank you so much for listening. There are so many people to thank, and you can look in the show notes for that. And also, if you want to know and see any of these texts in the original, we actually have that too. You can actually find that in our episode description. So look in each of the episode descriptions and you'll find that information right there. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody.